Today on Homeworthy, we're taking a tour of some of the country's most renowned residential architects' homes. Join us as we explore Jill Nebauer's modern waterfront retreat, James Carter's elegantly antique-filled residence, and the stunning Greek revival home of Peter Pennoyer and Katie Ritter. You're watching Homeworthy, where we believe every home has a story. Before today's episode, click the join button below to support all of the storytelling we do on this channel. Our growing community of members help to directly fund more videos so we can capture these extraordinary homes from around the world. So join today to receive early and exclusive access to new Homeworthy videos.
Hi Homeworthy. I'm Jill Nebauer. Welcome to my home, Lucky Pines. You're on Cape Cod, and I look forward to showing you my home today. Come on in. Created this property starting in 1994 when we found the land after 4 years of searching. And it was an impenetrable briar thicket. You couldn't even see the lake. And so my landscape architect, ex-husband, and I created this together. And I can't wait to show you all the buildings and the rooms that we have here. So I really wanted to have a modern camp. I am from Wisconsin, and when I moved to New England for grad school, I married New England and came to the Cape for work and just felt like I missed that north woods of Wisconsin, the lakes, the big pine trees, and this property that we found, again, dug it out of the woods, didn't even know it was here. And that helped me to say, this is a beautiful place. I'm going to be very happy here. So I've been in this house for 26 years, and it is my happy place. And I'd love to welcome you in and show you around. So let's get started. Come on into the mudroom. This mudroom is old chalkboards that we reclaimed from Western Mass. And they even have the school board rooms on them. And my girls drew this on here probably 25 years ago, and we've been careful not to wash it off. And one Christmas they drew the horse on here. And my father-in-law actually drew a perfect drawing of his dairy farm. He's a 9th generation dairy farmer, and he just walked in here with a piece of chalk. And so we've left it there for at least 20 years. We've got our canoe paddles from the children's childhood trips out in Wisconsin. And you can see I like functionality. I like cabins that just put it all out there and make things very functional. So everybody had a basket growing up, and there were a couple of extras. We've got clam baskets from Cape Cod that we throw the shoes into. And if you can't find it, go looking in the baskets or in the clam basket. And in Wisconsin, it's a tradition to, when you go skiing someplace, you have a patch. So when I was young, I collected patches, and they were all over my ski coat. And then my mother put them on a panel for me, and as I became an adult, I started doing it for my girls. And so these are all the ski patches from places that we've been. So it's a lot of history and memories from my childhood and my girls' childhood. One of the things I love is the combination of modern things and older, warm, textured, sentimental things. My grandma, Volker in Wisconsin, she collected baskets from the Winnebago Indians in Wisconsin. And everywhere she went, every picnic, every Christmas party, she would have a basket. And she came in like this with the Christmas presents in her baskets or the wine or whatever she was bringing. And so I have taken that on in my life, and I love baskets and sacks. And you can tell this one's got a little few years on it, but I even have her old LL bean bags that she used to come over with, and I can't bear to part with them. So you're going to see, I'm an architect that loves modern architecture, but I'm rather sentimental and love the stories of the things that accumulate in a house. So one comes in, and our mudroom's right here, but then it opens up into the great room that holds the kitchen and the dining room before you get to the living room. And we wanted this open, connected space so we can see the water, but also just have everything available to us. So it's all open with no cabinetry up above. And we have this kind of nifty countertop that people come in and start going, what is this? What is this? And we always have a guessing game as to what it is. It's plywood. And when we were about to finish the house, we had 2 little kids. We didn't have enough money or energy to make the countertop out of concrete, which is what we were hoping for. So we said, let's paint some plywood. We'll put it in for 3 months, and then we have money and energy, we'll change it. And that was 26 years ago. And we love this countertop. So that's one of the pleasures of this kitchen. And it certainly isn't precious. So we have the plywood countertop on this side, and then here we had a custom stainless steel countertop made with the integral sink. And as an architect, we're always working on kitchens, and I love to tell clients, I say, can I stand on my soapbox for sinks? And they say, sure. And I'm like, so you want a big sink where the turkey roasting pan goes, and then a sink where compost can go, and then a sink where your clean, dry dishes sit down here, so they're not sitting up here being yucky on the top of a countertop. And sometimes they say, oh, aren't you just wonderful? And we're going to do that. Sometimes they don't say that. But so this is our sink combination, and it's terrific. And again, like the mudroom, just open functionality. This is recycling and soap and the stuff of life. It's not hidden, cutting boards. I spend less time opening up drawers and drawers trying to hide things, so I'm pretty direct and functional about all these things. And all the knotty pine refers back to the knotty pine that's on the site. One of the things you'll see as we go through the house are our beloved trees. So the name of this house is Lucky Pines, and these are the Lucky Pines. They were growing right here on the site, and we cut them down, saved them, dried them, peeled them, and put them back in as the structural system. So they go 3 stories tall all the way up to the roof, and then they become where I hang everything from wet beach towels to beloved treasures from the kids. And you'll see those all throughout the house. This concrete wall, we're going to talk about this when we are outside also, but this concrete wall moves through this entire house. It goes out to the garden. It holds the workshop and shed. It picks up again out in the barn. And so this wall is actually the inside-outside foundation wall. It's insulated on the outside. But it is the working wall that holds up the hillside that allowed us to cut the hillside and to make this place for the buildings. So it moves through, and we can see it here in its beautiful texture. It was sandblasted because of a fire that we had 2 weeks before we were moving in. Right here, this floor burned out completely. This tree column dropped down, and we had to put in a new tree. But there was just a little electrical fire that happened, and it smoked the house out. And the house was black. It was black goo. So this was missing. The concrete was black. We stripped out all the plaster, and we sandblasted the concrete, and I actually think it's really beautiful. You can just see how it catches the light and the sunlight coming down from the skylight. I think it's a very beautiful detail. Throughout my house, I have paintings, and almost all the paintings here are done by family members. My grandmother was a painter. My mother was very creative. My sister is a painter, and my girls painted. So this little adorable painting, 1965, was my grandmother's painting, and she just did for fun, just painted for herself. And then my daughter, when she was little, did a little horsey painting up there. And so we're going to show you those things as we move throughout the house. So architects often like to have everything the same, everything matches and it's lovely. And I used to be that way, but as life goes on, I've softened and I'm bringing in more things that have more meaning to me. So of course I have Heath dishes, from San Francisco, and I love them, and those are beautiful. But when I was young, I was a potter. As a teenager, I was a potter, and I had these things in storage for probably 40 or 50 years. And when I bought the Heath dishes, I thought, why not? Let's just start making this more fun. And Joanna in the office has made beautiful pottery, and so I have this from her. And so that's been a fun way to just loosen the strings on architects' desire to make everything so special. A friend of my daughter made this. My daughter's favorite song is Moon River. And so she put that on a piece of pottery for us. And then our Scandinavian horses, which we collected over the years for each, birthday. They got a special one. And these are just silly things, but they're like tea and chocolate boxes that are so beautiful. I can't part with them. And all these things here are ribbons from flowers. People send flowers or cards and they have ribbons on them. And I just started tying them on here. So just special, just love. It's like love ribbons that I've kept. So I want to show you a really special room, probably my favorite room after the mud room. And it's around this corner. And it's kind of the functional and the magical, because this is where good things happen. So on this side, we have the magical, the party and the fun. If anyone wants a drink, they can make it here. Got a little refrigerator, and this has been a lot of fun. And I have my dad's crystal glasses that he loved to have a drink in. And then people have been giving me beautiful crystal glasses. And on this side is the reality of life. Everything you need in a kitchen, plus probably a lot of things you don't need, but vases, candles, all the food, and everything for baking. So it's a lot of stuff. This is normally in upper cabinets, but in here it's just walk in and it's all visible. And I have an old metal bucket down here that has mixers in it. And of course, another place, I don't know how people live without bulletin boards, but I got a cork board here where I put the things of life that make me happy. And of course, I have the heights of the family here, 3 feet. We mark them with the heights, and we have everybody's heights up through. And so that's a fun board for us in the grocery list. So it's nice to have a back kitchen door like many homes have, and our kitchen door heads out to kind of a special place for us. And so this is our kitchen door that leads out to our garden. This is the wall I spoke of that organizes all the buildings on the site. And in this garden, we turned it into a fountain and a runnel. It's a long copper trough that leads us out underneath the oak leaf hydrangeas and the trumpet vine. And the fun thing about this is one comes from the kitchen and right out to the outdoor shower area. And so one can take a shower out here and be underneath the trumpet vine and the oak leaf hydrangea. And you could even flip a burger on the grill while you're having an outdoor shower. So it's a lovely connection all the way through the house. We can see all the way down and outside towards the lake from this view. And so we love this garden. So I can't wait to show you the gardens and the other buildings. But right now we're going to go back inside and see what else is waiting for us. So we're coming back inside. And this space is really special because I think one can really see the site so well. And what I love about being here, it's a deep woods with big pine trees, but the lake is outside. And the orientation of the entire house isn't straight on to the lake. It changes with each room. And so this little angled out bay helps change one's view and orientation towards the water. And part of that is we wanted to have a semi-industrial house. We loved the logs and the knotty pine, but an all log cabin is a lot. So you can see the knotty pine coming through, but you can also see the steel beams, just the raw steel. And so what better place for a couple of 30-year-olds to throw a garage door into the dining room. And that was something that we just thought would be fun and easy, and it's proven to be a really a neat feature. This door goes up all summer long. There's a big screen on it, and then we close it in the fall. When we're having lovely weather, this is what we do with our dining room wall. And then it stays there most of the summer. We've got one screen here, and that stays all summer. And then in the fall, that comes off and some storm panels goes on, and we close the door. And it's been a beautiful place to sit and have dinner and experience this view, feeling like you're outside, but you're a little bit inside. And we love that juxtaposition of the warmth of the pine with a little bit of industrial character in the house. And this bench is a place that my daughter, she claimed this as her own. She sat here and did homework every night during high school, and this was her spot to sit with the kitty cat and to have that view. So we feel like this is very special. These chunks of wood were reclaimed from Katamet Sawmill, and we just stuck them in as big chunks of wood. So it's a rugged place with some knoll chairs that were the originals that we had reupholstered. And so again, the velvet with the chunky wood and the industrial door is just that combination of all the things that make it warm and rich and interesting for us. Over the years that I've been in New England, which is now almost 40, I've enjoyed spending a lot of time in Vermont. And this sign we found at a junk sale. And what's neat is, what I first noticed was camp lot for sales, which is what this place is like. But then underneath it, the original sign said Fairbanks Scales. And that was a business up in Vermont. So somebody had taken a Fairbanks sign and decided, no, we've got camp lots for sale. So we picked that up, and I just love the Vermont piece and then the Lucky Pines camp reference. We've got a few more things like that in the house that I look forward to showing you. Oftentimes when I'm setting a table, I am taking pine cones that I've collected on trips. Some of these pine cones come from my grandmother, the painter, who loved the West. So back in the 30s and 20s, when she went out west, she would collect pine cones. And then we, out hiking, when we found antlers that deer have dropped, and we just cherish them and bring them home. And then all these ball jars that have crocheted elements over them. Girlfriends got together and we did these one night, and I don't know how to crochet, but they helped me. And so I've had these for years, more than 10 years, and just keep putting new candles in the ball jars. These are antique napkins that happen to have my daughter's initials on them, just coincidentally, E.L., Elizabeth Louise. And so those are very sweet. Again, just bringing together natural, fun things that have meaning for us. That's a really important part of how I decorate the house. So as we move from the dining room and kitchen space, we wanted to have a little separation between these spaces and the living room. Again, we wanted every room to have a different relationship with the water. And so we created this freestanding concrete wall that has the fireplace on the other side. But what it did is it gave me a place to have a wall of a live, moving photography collection. And so I've taken photographs that come up and letters and things that I just love. And I get to live with them every day and pass by them and pause and read them. So the wall has the strength, and then the special things hang there as these memory pieces. As an architect from Wisconsin, Frank Lloyd Wright is central to my core spirit about architecture, and I've always loved this lamp that he designed. And there are many versions of it in his home in Taliesin as he experimented with its design. And I fell in love with it as a 20-year-old. And about 15 years ago, I said, that's it, I'm buying it. So I love this lamp. And it also gives me a little place for all these continuing special things. And when I went back to Taliesin a couple summers ago, I was so happy to see that Frank Lloyd Wright had his special things sitting on the lamp, and so I felt validated for me to put more things on it. So it's a very special piece for me, and I love it. So with this concrete wall and all the other walls on the first floor, there are very few. You'll see that none of them meet the ceiling. And we did that so that the entire envelope of the first floor floats freely, and that the powder room, the pantry, and this wall, which are the only elements in this whole first floor, they come up to a little more than 6 feet. And so as we come around this wall, we see how then the space opens up, but this light flows over from one side to the other. So we're coming into the living room, which has its own special piece and relationship with the landscape that I look forward to having you see. We have a Malm fireplace from California, a classic modern piece, and then raw steel that makes the fireplace space. So non-flammable, but also rusty and black like gunmetal. And you'll see upstairs why the gunmetal is special to me. But I love how the fabric, the rust, the pine floors, and the concrete all come together and balance each other out with heat and cool and hard. And these floors, you can see how warm they are. They are resawn, reclaimed, antique yellow pine. We have a local sawyer here that reclaims things and made these floors for us. And then they're oil covered, so you get a very rich ambery color. And it's just very pretty with all the textures. This corn crib wall behind the sofa is coming from my background in Wisconsin, that corn cribs are on most farm properties. And so we like the idea of making the barrier between the living room and the stair that goes down to the lower level. But again, having the wall not meet the ceiling. And so now you get to see the pine trees outside, the steel beam, the pine columns, and then the artwork. So all this artwork is from family members. Again, we've got Grandma who loved to paint. This one is from 1949. And she liked to take calendars and then paint the image from the calendars, and that's what this one was. But I love geraniums. She always had geraniums. And then my daughter liked to make things when she was in high school, and so these are her pieces and her little paintings and explorations. And so we're very fortunate to have those. So I think what I really love about this space is that I can see the kitchen and the concrete wall and the window outside, but it's cozy, and then it lets go in the corner, and we get this moment of glass that gives us a lovely view to the woodland and the lake. And during the winter, we can see the lake fully. During the summer, it's a little obscured. And then we put the piano here so that Lizzie had the prettiest spot to sit and play as a young player. So now this piano and I are getting to be friends, and I have an adult piano beginner book, and I sit here and learn where middle C is, and it's a joy to be developing a relationship with this piano that my daughter enjoyed so much. So as we move from the living room to the library, you see another painting. This is by my sister. She painted it of my girls, and I just treasure that. And the old record collection from the 70s, and macrame from my girlfriend. And we come into a room that we added in 2008. So about 10 years after we built the house, we added on this library. It created an art space downstairs, and then it created, this is my favorite room to do work or read. It was just a library before COVID, and then during COVID it became an office, so it was a lovely place to work. And again, many sentimental things. My great uncle's fishing gear and turkey calls. So just a very warm, emotional space for me that is filled with beautiful things. And then again, I get to turn around and look at the lake. So every room has this corner breakaway of the windows to connect us with the lake and the landscape. So we've collected these things over the years in special places. That kiln came out of a client's house. Then I bought this one. Of course, I was out west, and I just love hides. I think they're very beautiful, and I honor the animal that made it possible. This was my grandmother's footstool, and she needle pointed it, and I've just kept it forever. And then when we bought our little house in Vermont, we bought it furnished. An elderly man, Mr. Brown, left it, and this chair was there. And I have to say, it's the most comfortable chair. I love it. And we brought that down from Vermont, and we brought the birch trees down from Vermont and made the columns for the bookshelves and the table. And then again, just milled up plank pine from a local supplier and made a simple table that again, makes me happy with the memories that it has. So I'd love to take you upstairs and show you more of the things we have collected over the years. We're going to take our concrete wall with us as we head up. So we come upstairs and we're going to show you plaster in this house. There is no paint. We just have colored plaster walls. We have the rusty color, and you'll see this ivory sandy color, and then I'll show you the green in the girls' bedroom. But I also want to talk about, as a liberal Easterner, and you come upstairs and here's a gun collection. And it's because my father, who really was just a cowboy, collected the cowboy guns from the 1800s, the Winchesters from the 1860s through the 1890s. And so I have some of his collection, along with his holsters that he would put on and put his guns in on Saturdays when there's a Western on TV. No kidding. As kids, he would have his two guns, and he would shoot at the TV like John Wayne, and then he'd practice, and he'd be swirling his guns, and sometimes he'd say, oh, that was a good one, I got to do that again. So that's what I grew up with, and I'm transplanted to the east. So this is my little bit of my father here, making me happy. So this bedroom was where my girls grew up together until they became teenagers. And at some point, one of them had a young birthday, and their father built this bed for them, and we had velvet draperies that hung down, and it was their princess world, and they would close the velvet draperies or then tie them back with big gold sash. So it's been a special place, and when they were little, they didn't want their beds separated, so that's why two twins were put together to make this world, and they hung things all over this that were special to them. So we love that. And the horse ribbons were collected. You'll see up at the barn that my daughter was a rider her whole life, and so she collected her ribbons. And here you get to see the plaster and the two colors of the plaster that are in this room. So we took the sand from the site, and we took the green pine needles, and we took the rusty pine needles, and we literally put them out, and we mix colors with the plaster to make the colors of the site come forward. And we like that the walls have so much movement and character to them that we just love how they change over the years, and only the window frames are painted. So it's a nice character and richness to these walls that we really love. So I want to show you something really special over here. There's a little window that goes out to the garden, and we can hear that fountain. And right now we're just catching the oak leaf hydrangea and the trumpet vine in full bloom. It's just a really lovely, it's a lovely, sweet moment in this bedroom. And there's an architectural element here I want to share, and that is that you can see this colored plaster and the movement in it. This is where we were striving to get the green pine needle color of the property into this room and into a couple of the rooms upstairs. And so all of this is not painted, it's just colored plaster, and just this little bit of the window is painted. But really, the show is outside. So now I'm going to bring you down to the primary bedroom through our hallway. When my daughter got to be a teenager, she moved out of her sister's room and into here. And we have all their books and my books over the years, with a lot of photographs, some travels out to the Southwest from my grandmother, again in the 20s. And my daughters were dancers, and some of their special things from early childhood. So as we come down to the end of the hallway, we come into my bedroom, the primary bedroom, and like the living room or the library, we have a corner of windows so that we can enjoy a view to the water. And because the bed really wanted to face the water, but there was no way to really get it to do that, we created this slightly curving wall that became a headboard. And that allowed the bed to shift and have a little bit of a gesture towards the water. And again, you can see the colored plaster in here with the juxtaposition of the rusty colored plaster of the rusty pine needles. And it's that green and rust that we have inside the house because it was outside the house. We've got more of these tree columns coming up here. They've made it all the way to the top floor, and they're working their way up to the steel beam and to our cathedral shed ceiling. And this ceiling roof runs all the way down with a loft in between this bedroom and the girls' bedroom. So there's a flat ceiling in the bathrooms and in the guest bedroom, but we get the lovely cathedral ceiling with the framing exposed, which gives that warmth and texture that we love. So on this curving wall, you might notice something a little unusual for a bedroom, but I am from Wisconsin, so that's a musky lung fish, and I'd like to say that I caught it, or I know somebody that caught it, but I don't. I just made it possible by going into a taxidermy shop in Wisconsin. But there's a reason why it was important to me, and that's because there's a great family fishing story of my grandpa at the cabin in northern Wisconsin. He caught the fish of a lifetime, and they're pretty tough fish, so you carry a small gun with you to shoot them before you bring them in the boat because they have such teeth. And as he shot this fish, he shot through the line and it got away. And he was so sick about it that he went out walking the shoreline of the lake that night, and he found the fish. And that's why I have a fish hanging over my bed. So behind this curving wall, we have a little tiny bathroom. My parents didn't want us to have to share with the children our whole lives, and so they gave us a little bit of money. We stretched the house and we carved out this little tiny bathroom that has been fantastic. And what we do love is that it is the back of the rusty wall. So it's a very beautiful shape that leads us into it with a shower and the water closet. So this little space feeds down into here, where the chimney from that Malm fireplace that you saw in the living room, it had to go somewhere, and we don't have any thick walls to hide it in. So it runs right through the bathroom and puts off a little bit of heat, and has a steel plate on the floor. And so we're bringing that aesthetic of the pine boards and the steel and the plaster upstairs from down below. So it looks like the weather has cleared, the sun's come out, and I look forward to showing you the gardens and the property here that make this place so special to me. And the first place we're going to go is to the garden that sits between the house and the workshop. What I love about coming out into the garden is that I'm in a space between the house and the barn, and then between the workshop and the house here. And we built this workshop, which became a guest room, as the first building. And that was the workshop that helped us do some of the work to make the other buildings. And it's this in-between space that's become this sanctuary for us. And there's this arbor here with the trumpet vine. This is New England, this isn't Hawaii. So it's even more amazing how happy this trumpet vine is. And when one goes underneath the vine into the arbor, at nighttime it has these lights. It's just a beautiful place with the fountain in the background creating that backdrop of sound. And so I just feel so lucky to be here, of having this space that is both built and architecture, but landscape. It seems to me this perfect outdoor room that feels like quite a sanctuary. We've had beautiful dinner parties here, and I'm glad to share it with you. So as we leave this garden, we're walking along this rustic building that's become a lot of wonderful functional things for us. This is our workshop, and this is where we park the cars, and that's kind of bicycle and toys and things. And then you can see why I fell in love with this property. You know, our magnificent big white pines. And we have our firewood in this building where we keep the tractor sometimes, and our kayaks. We love to kayak. And what we're going to do is take you up and show you a really special room that we tucked in above this workshop. But we're going to wait a minute because we're going to come at it through a little secret garden. So I promised to show you a secret space that we made that we really treasure. So come on up and we'll take a look. So we're coming up. This is the workshop from downstairs, and it's behind here. But we're going to keep on going and take a look at what we've got. Just watch your head. So when we originally built this building, it was just the wood storage area for the workshop below, and there was a trapdoor hole right here. And I was left up here at the top of a ladder, and the ladder was taken away. By the time he came back, I said, let's make it a guest room. We've got 2 weeks till everybody shows up for Christmas. So we did this, and we put in a little half bathroom because you can use the outdoor shower during the summer. And we've got this rustic, charming little guest space that everybody loves, as long as you watch your head when you come through. So now I want to show you one more space in this landscape that's very special. We're going to take a little walk through the woods. So we're up above the garden, and we have this oak leaf hydrangea hedge on this side and the woodlands pressing in on this side. And we've carved out this little treasure of a pathway that gets us from this upper workshop down to another little special place I can't wait to share with you. So this is the pathway to get down to swim in the lake, but there's another pathway here I want to take you down. So about 10 years ago, I was driving across the country with my daughter and we stayed at Moab under canvas. And that was magical. What an incredible place. And I came home and said, I need my own canvas. I need my own Cape Cod under canvas. And so we created this. We've got a little fire pit down here. And then we've got what I think is the most magical bedroom on the property, a place that guests fight over as to who gets to stay in this versus up in the love shack. And here you are, welcome to the glamp. Let's take a look inside. Come on in. So when I came back from that trip out to Moab, I sketched up a tent and went looking for a company that would sew it for me. So the Denver Tent Company sewed this up for us, and then we built a frame from the locust trees on the site, and we dropped this tent over it every springtime, and we can zip it off in the winter and put it in storage. What makes this pretty terrific is that this is a real bed, a king-size bed. So there's no camping on a rough mattress here. It's pretty luxurious, and there is nothing like waking up and having this view of the water, or better yet, taking an afternoon nap down here. So this is my summer magical space at Lucky Pines. So being an architect on a property is fun as you get to add buildings. And my daughter was born looking for a pony. I was more than happy to help with that interest. And so this was the last building that we built on the property, and it is our barn. And for 20 years we had horses in here. But now we have something else. We have a party barn with a harvest area that we really love entertaining and having dinner parties up here. But there's a little room here that still holds the memory of the horses and all the fun that went with that. We would have pizza parties in this room on Friday nights. The family would get together, have pizza, and sit amongst the saddles and the tack and play cards. Being a residential architect and sitting here on this property is a phenomenal experience, because being a residential architect means that you meet people and you see their land and you meet their family, and we make buildings out of the stories and out of the landscapes. And Lucky Pines is my story, and it is my heart place where this landscape brought me back to my roots, my emotional and visual roots of northern Wisconsin. And we made a home here. And I think as a young architect, it's such a rare opportunity to be able to design and build your own home. And I had a great collaborator, and we built this place piece by piece and idea by idea, but always holding to what I needed visually and what I needed as a soulful place. So as a residential architect, this is my home, and I love it here because it anchors me to the landscape, and it gives me such a sentimental, emotional place where all my memories of raising children and sharing this with family are here. And the campiness, the modern components, the great pine trees, the glamp, you know, it's all a treasure of memories and visual richness for me. So home means making a place that captures all of that for somebody, for everybody. And I'm so grateful I was able to share it with Homeworthy. Thank you, Homeworthy, for visiting me today at Lucky Pines. I'm so grateful to share it with you. And I hope that Lucky Pines has touched your heart the way it's touched mine. Until next time, take care.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to go to homeworthy.com for exclusive content, shopping guides, and so much more.
Hello, Homeworthy. I'm James Carter. Welcome to my Birmingham home. Please come in. My name is James Carter. I'm an architect living here in Birmingham, and so welcome to Birmingham. I always have had an interest in houses, and when I was a little boy, I used to ride my bike around whenever they were building a new house and try to figure out the floor plans. This is back when I got in trouble for doing that. But I really never had any doubt that I would not want to design houses. And so I went off to school, and after graduation came to Birmingham and was fortunate enough to work for a very well-established and talented firm of architects doing primarily residential design. I worked for them for about 10 years and decided it was time for me to try my own thing. So I guess around 1990, I established James F. Carter, and we only do residential work, and we try to do as few as we can a year. And we've done houses everywhere around the country, but primarily in the American South. We do a lot of repeat business. I'll do someone's main home, and then they're nice enough to ask us to do a second or a third, and we call these people repeat offenders. But it's nice. Our work is very intimate, and you get to know your clients quite well. And I am only an architect. I am not an interior decorator or a garden designer, but I have a huge interest in all aspects of the product and find that they all must work together. I work basically, work is my #1 hobby, and I can work as much as I'm allowed to work. My second hobby is travel, and that's primarily to see the work of other people. And third, I love to collect books and read, and that's pretty much all about 1 and 2. And so I'm also a collector. I love to bring things back from trips and travel to things, and I love the idea that everything has some meaning to me. It may not be extraordinarily sentimental, but I can tell you pretty much where everything in this house came from over the last 30 years. Well, the house was completed in 2013. I bought the property in 2000 and lived in a little house on the property with the idea of tearing it down. And I kept filling it up with things, but the poor little house, I never really did any maintenance. And there were some great stories about when the ceiling fell in the laundry room and I just mopped it up and kept on going. And we had light fixtures falling off the house. And in the 10 years I lived here, I had the exterior painted twice, but only on the front. So by the time I left, it was about to fall in. And whenever it would rain, I would go around with a flashlight and check the ceilings to make sure I didn't have any drips. So, you know, the plans, you know, if you've learned as you get older, plans don't ever go through the way you thought. I thought I'd be in the house for 2 years and then I'd start this one. And I was here probably at least 10 years. And then it took 3 years to build. There's a lot of detail in here, and I was having good friends help me with the work, and so that always takes longer. But I told somebody, having lived in apartments and then in a little house that was sort of at best a cottage, the first morning you wake up and you walk around the house with a cup of coffee and the house is warm on a cold day, or the first time you look out and you see the sprinkler system going off, watering the lawn, you feel like you've kind of made it somewhere. And I used to travel a lot and get in a great shower or a great bed and wish I had one like it, and now I do. Welcome to my entry hall. People who have not been here don't realize that Birmingham is rather mountainous. And so my house is built into the side of a hill. And so much like a New York townhouse, you enter on the lower level, which is here, and then you go up the steps to where everything else happens. So this level is basically nothing but storage, future office if I want one, the garages and things like that. But I think an entrance hall always has to make a really strong statement and tell you something about the house. The things in here that I love the most, first off, the floor. I had someone tell me when I was planning this that checkerboard floors had gone out of style. And I thought that was the most absurd thing I'd ever heard. So that kind of cinched the deal for the floor. But I tend to gravitate toward pieces of furniture that have a lively silhouette from a distance. Things like these shield back chairs here. They have a nice line from a distance, and then when you get up close, they have a little bit of detail, which is very nice. And when I was thinking about it for this interview, I realized almost everything I own has a distant view and a close-up view. And so this chair here is a typical example. I love these rondelle portraits. They're bronze. I think they're French. They are all based on the idea I like seeing something across the room that draws your eye in. And then when you get there, they have something going on that you can enjoy. But there are three things in here that I'm particularly proud of. When I was a little boy, I was in New York and was at the Carlisle Hotel and saw a pair of Eagle-style consoles. And they used to be in the little vestibule off the elevator. And I thought they were the coolest things I'd ever seen. And over the years of my learning about architecture and interior design, I realized that my favorite architect, David Adler from Chicago, and his sister, Frances Elkins, used these consoles a lot. And so I decided one day that I had to have some. So around 2008, a pair came up that were within my price range, and I purchased them upstairs. You'll see them in a moment. They're the real thing. But I was in an antique shop with a friend of mine in Atlanta and saw this console, and it was painted gold, not real gold. And I looked at it and I could tell that it was not a particularly old one, but I found out it was one of those consoles that I had seen in the Carlisle. And so I said, load it up, it's mine. So I did paint it white, but I thought it was amazing. And this is one of the first things I remember seeing as a young man that I really thought was cool, that I wanted one. It represents what I like furniture to do. And it has a strong shape, and it has nice detail up close, and it's sort of timeless. And the fact that they've become popular again in a lot of decorating, maybe they never went away, it's just typical of good design. One of the things that I always wanted for my house was a tall case clock. And I never had quite the time to get one. I had other things I was focusing on, and during COVID, I became more interested in auctions. And this clock came up for auction in New York, and it had exactly what I wanted. It was the right period. I like things from around 1780 to 1820. And it was made in London, and I liked it because of the simple, strong face. I bid on it, and to some amazement, I managed to get it. They brought it down, and we had it bolted to the wall the way you're supposed to. And it has to be rewound every week. But I am amazed at how accurate the thing is, given that it was from 1790, supposedly. I have a tendency to collect themes, and I was on a trip several years ago for a friend's birthday in Europe, and I bought a walking stick. And the next thing I know, I bought this walking stick, which was made by the man who did Queen Victoria's. And then I started looking for walking sticks with a vengeance. And so now I have numerous ones that I've collected over the years. A lot of them are dogs. This walking stick, which is a frog, was very similar because my father called me Frog when I was a little boy. And so I had to have this walking stick. And then recently, a friend gave me this one, a crab claw, because they've said as I get older, I become more crabby. The urn here behind us was something I bought in Paris, and it's a Louis Philippe. It's a toll water urn, and normally they sit on a little box, and I think water comes out. But I loved it, and it's got a liner in it, which sometimes we put flowers in it. I don't. The people that do the flowers do. But I brought this back on the plane, and I'm amazed at what Delta has allowed me to bring back over the years. Recently, I brought a big painting back, and I don't know why they let me do it. This was another auction find. It is supposedly painted by a well-known portrait painter from the, I guess, turn of the 19th century. But I bought it because I like the way the man's cravat is rendered. He's got about 14 different whites, and I just thought it was really a well detailed picture. I hope one day to find out that it is even better than I'd like to think it is. So there's a problem in this house. Everything in my house I like to call is scratch and dent, which means if it hadn't been dropped or rolled down the hill at least once, I usually can't afford it. I actually, although the house is all my taste and my selections, I did, collaborate with one of my friends who's a decorator. All the furniture in the house was pretty much bought by me, but what my friend Jane did was she helped me organize it. And so it was a collaborative effort. The only thing different from what we would normally do for a client is I got the final say on everything. This is my stair landing, also my sort of small library here. As I mentioned earlier, I really like to read. And I collect everything from biographies to history. I don't do novels, but I always enjoy reading about architectural design. And so I have a little bit of everything here and there. And on the walls here, I have some early maps. The two in the middle were before the country was a country. And so it has all the Indian nations, which I'm very proud of. And the one on the top belonged to my grandfather. So I sort of made them a combination of a little bit of everything. One of the most important things you can have, I think, in a well-designed home is light, and light coming from different directions. And so I did not want to have this be just a blank wall with something on it dark. So I put in a window in the bookcases which opens through to another window which looks out on the property to the side. And the idea is mainly to introduce light from not only 1, 2, 3, but 4 directions to make the house a bit more cheery and upbeat. One of the things that happened earlier alone, I mentioned to a friend of mine that I was going to be reusing this Amari lamp that belonged to my grandmother. And they were like, I can't believe you're going to use that. Those are so old and dated. Nobody collects Amari. So my design friend Jane and I decided that we would basically do the entire second floor around this vase. So it was the one that inspired the color scheme of everything. And I did that just so people could say, you can actually use Amari in a new house. There's a lot of things here. I bring souvenirs back. These are old watercolors. This came from Switzerland. This is a little watercolor of a palace in St. Petersburg. I love souvenirs, and there's always something in my luggage when I'm coming home. Over here on this side, we've got a Swedish mirror. We've got an Italian table. We've got some, I think those are pin boxes I bought from the estate of Mario Boita. There's an obelisk here that I just ordered. And then oddly enough, of course, there's a drain from a broken sink. So that's there too. The flowers were done by my good friend Mary Donnell. I could not put a flower in a vase and make it work if my life depended on it. But I do think flowers add so much to a room and give the room life, which is what I'm always trying to do. The rest of these drawings, these are all original watercolors that I've collected over the years, not by me, but they reflect my interest and years and years of collecting. Well, besides the obvious, it's the only time I ever got to have exactly what I wanted, as opposed to having to bend to my collaborating decorative friends or decorative landscapers. I think it's mainly because it's surrounded by everything in the house means something to me. The chair behind the camera was my grandmother's. The pictures on the wall in there, some of those were taken directly from both grandparents. There's a boxer dog up there. My grandfather loved his boxers, and he raised them. And so I look at the dog and it reminds me of him. So for me, my house is basically a time capsule of my whole life. Welcome to my library. This is where I spend most of my time if I'm not working at the office. This room is full of a lot of things that mean a great deal to me. Some big things down to small things. I bought these Scottish prints on the wall. They're prints designed to look extraordinarily 3D. I bought those back in the 90s. The convex mirror here, I saw one night in a shop in London right when the dollar and the pound were at its worst, and yet I could not get it, so I got it. I've been collecting martini shakers over the years. This is about half what I've got. And they're all on top of this old, I think it's Irish table that I bought from a friend, a dealer. No one else had a room large enough for it. And the chairs on either side are Chinese Chippendale, and I've always had a love of Chippendale. Most people don't care for it that much, But my friend who was working with me on the project, Jane Hope, found these in Atlanta and basically knew enough to load them up and bring them because she knew I wanted them, and she was correct. I drink everything from a martini to a gin and tonic to scotch, just depends. The bar's a little low because of COVID. I used to have more alcohol, but I'm trying to replenish. I may have mentioned earlier that I have this passion for Egyptian revival. And those are, I have a pair of terracotta sphinxes that I think were originally in a garden, but they're too delicate to be in a garden. I have one here and I have one in my office, but I have a thing for anything that is Egyptian revival. Early on, before I built this house, my friend Jane said, quit buying so many small things, you need something large. So I found this English cabinet and decided that would be my large thing. We also figured out it was a great way to hide the TV. So this room was designed around this cabinet and this table and those pair of consoles over there. Everything else was just brought in, but I had already, most of the furniture I had, so when I was designing the room, I knew exactly where it would all have to go. This is a painting by a follower of Canaletto. I've always loved the work of Canaletto, so sadly cannot afford one, but this is a man who was a contemporary who was basically copied Canaletto's style, which became very popular. This chair is particularly precious to me. This was a chair that belonged to my grandparents. My grandmother used it when she was paying bills and writing checks. Jane, my designer, suggested I reupholster it in a more stylish pattern. It used to be in blue damask, and so I'm so happy I did because it's given it a whole new life, and it's made me extra proud of it. This is a little cast iron dog I found in Charleston, and he was so heavy. I don't know what he's made out of it besides cast iron, but I had to have him. And the best thing is he doesn't wet the rug and he doesn't bite. When I got out of school, I always thought that I might end up in Virginia or Maryland area because I have such a love of history and frankly a love of the architecture. Of course that didn't work out, and I think it was the right decision, but I decided when I was building this house that I would do a house very much inspired by the architecture of that area. And so there's a house in Maryland that I really liked, and so much of the molding and the detail in this house was patterned on that work. I knew that I wanted to do a mantle, and I wanted to have an elaborate overmantle because most of my clients won't let me do that. It's a bit too extravagant. And I knew I was only going to have this one fireplace that I really wanted to set it off. So we designed everything around the mantle, and then the painting I had bought in London. It is a fairly well-known artist who did all the paintings at Trinity College, the portraits. And years ago, this room was in a magazine with my Christmas tree, and I got a phone call from an art expert in London who said, I know about your painting, and he gave me the whole spiel. It's not the best painting in the world, but now it means extra more to me because it does have a very interesting history. As I said earlier downstairs, I have always had a passion for Eagle William Kentish style consoles. And these pair came up, I guess, in early part of 2000, and I jumped on them, and at the time they were far beyond my means, but I had to have them. And I've never regretted it, and I designed the entire room around this pair of consoles. The lamps are by my good friend Chris Spitzmiller, and then the drawings above it are ones I collected in France, primarily France, over the years, with some weird accessories. These are micro mosaics. There's a wonderful ball clock over there that I got from Niall Smith. And Niall has always been another destination that I loved. And I also have a huge interest in anything Grand Tour. So you've got these obelisk, there's one in the yard. You've got Trajan's column. And then you've got these small micro mosaics that sort of reinforce that theme. So really, if there's anything Grand Tour and not nailed down, I will try to buy it and take it. I'm very fortunate to have a lot of talented friends, and many of them have written books. And of course, I insist on getting a signed copy. And the books that are particularly dear to me are all right here on this table. But when I have a party, of course, I have to pass out coasters because I can't let anybody ruin the books. But if you've written a book for me, your book is here and signed somewhere in this pile here. I have a thing for pieces of furniture that do things, like rise up, tilt over, swing around. And this is a, I guess, early 19th century French writing architect's table or drawing lectern. And I found this, and it was at home. I really liked the people, and so I bought it from them. And I keep some of my nicest books here. This is a very rare book. This is a book on the work of Mellor, Meigs, and Howe. And it's all a book on one farm that was built outside of, it's in Lavrock, Pennsylvania. And the farm only existed for about 10 years, I think, and then was torn down. But it's one of my favorite books that I have. I think unless you're on the run under sort of the FBI relocation program, I think it's nice to have something from your past. Not everybody's fortunate to have beautiful things. I got that, I understand that. But I think it's nice when you can have a piece of your history. It's the same way that people name their children after previous generations. I think that's always lovely. It kind of gives someone sort of a grounding and an establishment. And to walk in here and see, and again, I'm surrounded things from the last 50 years of my life. And so I really like having that. And it's sort of, I can't imagine if walking into a room that I did not know something about almost everything in there. It'd be like being in a hotel. In the original plan of my house, this was going to be a small office where I could work at home at night. And I learned early on that I would never do that. I'd rather just stay at the office and work and then come home and separate myself from whatever was keeping me going that day. So it's become sort of an annex library. I have a lot of my design books in here, as well as a wall of family photographs. I consider myself to be the sort of keeper of the family photographs. This is a Regency writing desk, again, that tilts up. It's one of my favorite things I have. And on it are my parents, myself when I was much younger, my grandfather who made me bald. This is a steer horn that my grandfather brought back from a medical convention in Mexico City, in the 30s. I had to have this. And these are all my family. Welcome to my kitchen. It's a sad tale because I don't really cook, but I have had some amazing parties here, and people like to gravitate around this big counter because it's easier than trying to sit down. And when I designed this house, I designed it for casual entertaining, so I have a glass porch, screened porch, right off this through these glass doors. I was visiting some friends of mine years ago in Maine and admired their butler's pantry, which had black cabinets and mahogany tops. And I never quite forgot them, so when it came chance to design my own kitchen, I did the black cabinets and mahogany tops and stainless steel in honor of what I saw in Maine. So I'm most grateful, guys. Thank you. Well, I think a home is really supposed to sort of be an indicator and a frame of your life or the person who lives there. And so because my home is probably the result, decorative-wise, of 30 years of collecting, I think people instantly get some sense of who I am. And I think that's always nice. I don't like walking into a house that looks like it was all bought in one weekend at the Decorative Arts Center. I like houses that have that collected look. And I will say this house looked pretty much like this 6 months after I moved in, because before it was built, I spent 30 years buying things for it. Everything was bought into kind of place in the house that was in my head. And I think that's important, is I like houses that are not generic. I like them to be very personal. This is my porch. Every house in the South needs at least one porch. And I've been very pleased with this one. I wish sometimes I had a fireplace out here, but what it does is it has the fountain on one side and easy access to the kitchen for something to eat or drink, but it's been very successful with my friends. Originally, there was going to be a fireplace on this wall, and I realized not only was it really kind of beyond my budget, it was also a way to kill the view of the yard. And so I changed it to this more Jeffersonian arch ceiling with the half round light at the top to let light in and make it more light. And I'm very glad I did not do the fireplace. I think it had been too much for me. This is sort of my serving butler's pantry. I don't have a butler and barely have a server, but it's a place for me to stage things for the dining room here. I think earlier someone mentioned about china. I don't really get into china, but whenever I see a good deal, I will pick it up. So I've been collecting Spode Grecian over the years, which is kind of a nice kind of Beaux-Arts paper. And then I found several estates that have closed out. I believe these plates are particularly nice. They're so delicate, I don't use them very often because I don't want to break them. But then I have a whole lot of these, and they seem to be pretty much bulletproof. So the other ones who get used the most. And this is my dining room. I'm more of a TV tray kind of guy, but this room is here when I do need it. I made the room octagonal for several reasons. I particularly like an octagonal room or a round room, and this seemed to be the perfect reason for doing it. The screen there is French, and it's the only place in the house I had a wall large enough for it after I put all the other stuff in. But the table is French. The cellarette belonged to the architect Philip Schutsey in Atlanta, one of my idols. So I'm very happy to get that. The silver tray was a gift from my dear friend, the late Julia Reed, who I miss terribly. And the chairs are actually new chairs that I had painted. And oddly enough, they look like they're covered in red leather, but that's not red leather. That is latex paint over white vinyl. And I did it because I had to have it done for a party. And the first night I walked in and saw a lady in white pants sitting down on my painted chairs, I got really worried, but the paint has held up. And that was 8 years ago. So I probably will never ever upholster these chairs in leather at all. I bought these at auction recently. These are Fitzhugh, and they're armorial, and the crest has something to do with the Dutch royal family. But these are things you pour hot water in and they keep the plates warm, which I thought was pretty cool. And again, they're in my favorite color, which is orange. And so those were, nobody else seemed to want them, so I got them. And in here, I wanted to paint the room orange from day one, and James suggested we go with this bit softer color, this apricot color. And then I think together we came up with the idea that it'd be really cool if it were lacquered. So we lacquered it with the idea that it would be particularly pretty at night for the few times I have a dinner party. This is one of the few hallways in my house, and I decided to make it something of a mini art gallery. And these are all Grand Tour gouaches, which is a type of watercolor from Italy. And almost every one of them has a night scene or a day scene of a volcano exploding. But more for me, they have a lot of blue light, and I think the blue reminds me of the beach and the water and the Adriatic. And so all of that is something that I enjoy seeing. I particularly enjoy seeing the ones at night, but these were all meant to indicate to people that you had been to Italy and Naples and seen and done sort of a grand tour. I just like a certain sense of continuity. If I could have found a house in Birmingham that was an old one that I liked, I would have probably bought it because I love the bones of an old house. But many of the ones I looked at were either not in a great location, or they were in such poor condition I would have spent a fortune. So at a certain point I realized I had to create what I wanted. And that allowed me to basically get as little as I needed, and I don't have a lot of extraneous rooms I don't use. I live alone, and so this house is like a really large condo. But there are rooms upstairs and downstairs for people if they want them. Guests stay upstairs, of course, usually. But the house was designed for me very much like a custom suit. Oh, pardon me, you're in the powder room now. When we were coming up the design for this, I had originally wanted some kind of interesting chinoiserie paper or something, and my designer, Jane Hoke, said, why don't you try Italian cork? And I fell in love with it. I have a slight interest in 70s kind of glamour design, and so I'm One of my favorite things in this house is this cork wallpaper. And we mixed it in with other things. Most of the art here are more of the gouaches. There's a small oil painting, a French one. This is the only contemporary painting in the house. It's French and from the 40s. And I bought it in Charleston at the antique show there, and I've been in love with it ever since. And it's sort of a joke. I have it behind the door in the powder room because most of my guests don't expect to see anything new in this house. But over the next couple of years, one of my goals is to introduce more of this type of thing in the house to sort of update and kind of give the house a new look and a new life. Welcome to my bedroom. This is on the main level of the house and convenient for a rapidly aging architect. This room, when I was a little boy, I had the most beautiful room. It's a big rectangle shared with my brother. And my brother moved out and I was left with the biggest room any boy could ever want. But I always wanted a bedroom upstairs in the attic because I thought that would be more interesting. So I designed this house such that even though my bedroom is on the main level, it feels like it may be in the attic. And so everything was designed to make it as cozy as possible. This fabric, which is from Robert Keim, was the only floral that I really, really liked. And I liked it with the dark green. And people wonder if I'll ever get tired of the dark green, and I say there's no way I ever will because I love it so much. The bed was designed and inspired by one at the Sleeper Museum in Gloucester, Massachusetts. I thought it was the coolest idea in the world, and it was a great way for me to get a 4-poster bed, not unlike the one I had at home, but this one is designed to fit the break of the ceiling. One of the things I liked about the ceiling in this room is it allowed me to do something particularly charming. So once you're in the room, you see my fireplace, the ever-present bookcases that I have in the house, as well as the arch door going back into the main part of the house. But for me, it's the perfect size room. It's very cozy, and I've got my wingback chair that belonged to my grandparents there in case I ever want to sit down and read. Oddly enough, I put a television in this house, and in 10 years, this television has never been cut on. I can't understand why, but I've never used it. But under it is a wonderful cast iron bear that belonged to my friend Julia Reed's grandfather. That when it was up for auction, I don't think very many people knew what it was, and so I managed to get it. And then beside that, I have my grandfather Lazenby, who managed to make me bald at an early age. So thank you. This is my dressing room area, and I am not really a bathroom person. I wanted my dressing room to feel pretty much just an extension of my bedroom. So instead of having cold marble floors, I have wood floors, and then I put my sink in with my clothing and kept the toilets and showers and everything like that completely separate. So it doesn't look like a bathroom, and that was done on purpose. We upholstered the walls in this Schumacher stripe, and then we went back to the floral from the bedroom, and then a friend of mine had suggested collecting silhouettes, so I've been collecting silhouettes. So again, another collection that I pull together now and then whenever I see one. Home is, I would say it's the vessel that you live your life. Years ago I read an article about where the person was saying he was trying to sort of create a backdrop. And I think a well-designed home is the backdrop for the lifestyle and the personality of the people that live there. If you are a prisoner of your own home and you feel you must adapt to your own home, I think it's probably something slightly amiss. The people that I admire sort of command their homes, and even if they're very large ones, and live in them, and it's their place and it's their nest. And I admire that and try to somewhat emulate that in my house on a smaller scale.
Hi, Homeworthy. Welcome to our house in upstate New York. I'm Katie Ritter.
I'm Peter Penoyer. Come on in and let us show you around.
You're watching Homeworthy, where we believe every home has a story. To shop items inspired by this and other Homeworthy episodes, be sure to check out the product links below for amazing furniture, accessories, and more.
I am Katie Ritter, and I am a New York City-based decorator, and we are in Millbrook, New York, in our house.
I'm Peter Pennoyer. I'm an architect, and I happen to be Katie's husband and the designer of this house. So we are on a mere 6.5 acres, which is a small plot for Millbrook, but we're surrounded by almost 1,500 acres of a wildlife preserve, which is why we occasionally get visited by bears and other strange animals. And we're really happy to be in this rural setting, and Katie's civilized it with a garden.
So once we decided to build a house in Millbrook, Peter was busy working on his plans for the house, and I was busy with a garden surrounding the house. When we moved here, we raised the house that was existing, and so there was nothing. And then, as well, at the same time, I was working on the interiors, and decorating comes easy to me, and garden design not as easy. So the decorating happened very quickly, and the garden I really labored over and studied and to figure out what I wanted to do for a good year before I actually planted.
But she did finish her garden before the construction was done, so she beat me to the finish line.
Yes.
So this is an open plan house. There's only one room downstairs, which is the library, which is also our TV room, where you can actually close the door. Everything else is open plan, but it looks like traditional rooms because the moldings, the openings are framed, the ceilings are all different, and each room has a particular shape. So it doesn't strike people as being an open plan, even though that's essentially what it is. It's very comfortable to be here, just the two of us, or when all our kids are here. You know, this is a town with people who care about the land. So it's all about the farms, the horses, the fields, and there's a big land preservation movement here. So it seemed like a perfect respite from the city. This is our entry hall, and I'm going to dive in as the architect by asking you to look up, come into the middle and look up at the ceiling. This is an open, vaulted balcony, essentially, which looks up to the bedroom hall and brings light in all day in the middle of the house through this ley light. The pattern of stars on the ley light is actually vinyl stickers, and I actually stuck them on one by one on the glass panes, and the contractor lifted the glass up and put it back into the frame. So that was a really special, almost arts and crafts project, which most people think is paint, but it's an interesting pattern. And we also have lighting behind that window in the ceiling so that at night it bathes the whole space in light.
So I love purple, and I rarely get to use purple, so voila, my purple floor. And we then wanted a little bit of seating in the front entry, so I have a little settee there. I loved needlepoint, so I've made all these pillows. Everywhere throughout the house, you'll see a lot of needlepoint. It's what I do. And then here we have, this changes week by week. It's not quite dahlia season. So I have, this is called oxalis, and I'll have plants, geraniums, and then flowers later on in the season here. And then I have this collection of little doves.
Well, they're actually soup tureens. You could actually drink your soup out of it.
Yeah, they're soup
I
tureens.
don't recommend it.
But they're doves, and they're English, and I found a lot of them on eBay and Invaluable, and I've been collecting those.
And the table is an American classical table from the collection of the investment firm DLJ. So
right.
we pick up some interesting things at auction, especially furniture that isn't as popular in the general taste these days. And I also want to point out Abraham Lincoln, because his pedestal is the cabinet that holds the leaves for our dining room table. So these go in one by one, and then suddenly it expands from being able to seat 6 to 12. So it's a double duty piece of furniture. And a lot of things here have a story. We love Sweden, we love Stockholm. These are these Swedish gray sconces from Stockholm. The elephant, I think, was in a store.
It was in my shop. I had in between the magazine business and becoming a decorator, I had a retail shop on Lexington and 69th Street in New York City. And yeah, there are a pair of those that didn't sell. And so I have a few things left over from my shop from the late 80s. And then Peter, you have your collection of
Yes, so
New York City.
The photography and the prints are all about New York City and historic architecture and interesting photographers and some of them architects who didn't have work in the Depression and took their hand to documenting the city. From Grand Central to the World's Fair, the harbor, Stieglitz, Jessie Tarbox Beals, the first woman photojournalist to be paid for her work. So there's a story here. None of them are, I don't think, particularly famous artists, but it's a special collection for us.
And then right here, when you first walk in our house, I have an etagere filled with all my garden books and my garden diaries. So these are from the years starting from 2014, and it's by the date of all the different things when I started my sweet peas, when I should start my potatoes, and different notes on what worked well and what didn't work well. So I've got it from 2014 every year for my garden. That was the first year I started. So in the front entry, you know, because this is a second house for us, we didn't have anything. So we really started from scratch. And it was taking Peter's plan and dropping in the furniture. And, you know, a lot of good deals happen at auction. So many of the things that you see here we bought at auction, and a lot of it is brown furniture, which, you know, you get incredible deals because people don't like brown furniture anymore. But so it introduces you to the house, a lot of antiques. We have a lot of antiques in this house, and a lot of color and a lot of pattern. At the beginning, when I was in the planning stages, I was very worried about what Peter would think of what I had planned, but he kept saying, really, just you do your thing. Just decorate and use the colors you want to use. And so I really felt uninhibited to do exactly what I wanted to do. I didn't feel like I had a client.
Yes, and I was surprised to get a pink living room. But Katie also was able to incorporate some of the antiques that I found, a couple of them without consulting her, like a big bust of Abraham Lincoln. But she was good-natured about all of that.
Yeah, there are a lot of busts, as you'll see, in this house.
Right off our entry, we have a little powder room, and the vanities, actually, architects shouldn't admit mistakes, but I ordered a vanity that was too big for a little powder room in New York City, so I paid the client for it, and here it is. It's a Tiffany lamp, and Katie?
And I have a wallpaper and fabric line, which is about 12 years old, and every year I add, you know, 5 or 6 different patterns. So this is one that I designed specifically for this house called Turtle Bay, and it is, you'll see, there are a lot of turtles around the house, inside and outside, and an antique mirror that Peter fashioned into a light fixture by adding sconces, drilling through the light.
And a big picture from our wedding day, enlarged from 35 millimeter negative, of us driving off in the car that we owned then, which had been painted for me by Keith Haring.
So we'll head into the library now. This is during COVID. This was Peter's office. It's a little library. It has our books. It doubles as a TV room behind this cabinet. It's a cozy spot. I mean, well, Peter, you spend the most time in this room.
Right. It's the only dark room in the house, and I love it. And these saturated colors on the wall is a perfect backdrop to this collection of American manuscripts and map and photographs and tintypes and bits of history that I like to collect.
And purple is the theme of this house, as you can tell already. So the walls are a deep, it's called mulberry. And it picks up some of the purples in the floor and in the dining room walls, which we'll go to in a minute.
And like so many things in this house, we've collected them over the years and in our travels. The brass lamps with these wonderful balls are from Stockholm again. The prints and photographs I've collected over the years, and their various objects that we found in our travels.
The window treatments, a lot of the things we have in this house are Swedish influence, like Peter was telling you about the sconces in the front entry. This is a Swedish fabric from Jobs Hand Truck, is a company in Sweden. But this is a classic Swedish design. Joseph Frank was the big influencer in Stockholm, and I'm sure Jobs Hand Truck, that designer, was influenced by Joseph Frank. And then more needlepoint and...
well, that's Katie. That's your needlepoint. Katie's needle-pointed pillows all over the house.
Yeah. So if you look out the window, I love having fresh flowers during the season, which is, branches in April and May, peonies in May and June, and then many flowers in August, September, October, including dahlias. So out here I have, I don't know, maybe 100 peonies. They're mostly three varieties. They're very fragrant. Above them are crabapple trees. But that's really a place where I pick my peonies in May.
You may not be able to see this, but the glass is imperfect. It has waves in it. It looks like glass from the 18th century, and it's insulated, so it's environmentally, performing, but it distorts a little bit, and that was intentional. This is a restoration product that's used on historic preservation, which we love. So I've been interested in historic American architecture since the beginning of my career, and I've been lucky to work with wonderful partners, one of whom helped me design this house, Gregory Gilmartin. And this is really a confluence of Greek Revival, Latrobe, and all sorts of other architects who've influenced my firm's work over the years. But it is a distinctly American house. The other thing is, even though it looks historic, in fact, some visitors think it's been here for a long time, which I take as a compliment. It's technically very advanced. Our electric bill is very low because we have special insulation and other environmental features. So even though it looks like it might have been here for 100 years, it really is a newfangled thing. We're stepping into the living room from our entry, and you'll notice that we don't have doors. Instead, Katie put in these curtains, which keep the space open but give it some definition.
And it adds some softness to the room. It also, I have them flanking on this is facing east and west, and it's just nice to have more fabric in this room. But I started it with this antique Ushak carpet that belonged to Dodie Rosecrans, actually someone I worked with at House and Garden in the 80s. It was from her house in San Francisco. So a few things that are important to me is my grandmother's settee, actually my great-grandmother's settee from her house called Steen Valachi, further up on the Hudson River. And we have, a seating area here and a seating area facing north. And it's just a cozy spot. I mean, it took a while to figure out, how we were going to use this room because it's very long and it opens up to the dining room, which we'll go into next. But in the winter, we have fires, a lot of fires. We play games in here. The kids tend to come more in the winter for some reason. So this is really our gathering spot, and it's just a very comfortable room. The walls it's a pink tea paper from de Gournay, and the valance up here is an embroidery from Penn and Fletcher. It's a embroidery shop in New York that I've worked with for years, and Ernie Smith is the owner, and he's just very clever. So I was lucky to get that detail in this room. And then a lot of upholstery and antiques.
And just collections from everywhere. This chair I had in 1984, and my client who owned the Mark Hotel at that time loved it so much that she made it the model for all the chairs in the first restaurant that we designed at the Mark. It's no longer there. That was a long time ago, but this is, and Katie, for instance, this lampshade, didn't you find that as a scarf in some thrift shop? And
I found it in Hawaii. It was actually a bullet-ridden fabric shop in downtown Kona. It had literally bullet holes in it. It was going out of business, and it's a pink rayon fabric, and I really love details, and lampshades are very important to me, and I like finding vintage textiles and coming up with unusual shaped lampshades and unusual trims.
Katie and I love sculpture, and if you look around the house, you'll see a dozen birds. Our favorite one is this American eagle, which is very early. It's late 18th century, and another auction find, and it really draws your eye up to the height of the ceiling.
This is City Hall. We bought this at Bukowski's in Stockholm, and it's just such a pretty painting, I think, with everything against the pink walls.
This is called The Spirit of America, and she's sitting on this mammoth pedestal that's actually a cabinet where we keep some of the dinnerware. And we also have this, our friend Petunia, the taxidermied skunk, and busts of my father and his twin sister made in 1925 on the mantelpiece.
My favorite room in the house is this living room. I get up very early, and I sit over there in the window, and I have my big cappuccino, and I'll needlepoint for 15 or 20 minutes in the morning, and it's quiet in the house. And it's just having the 12-foot ceilings is, it's such a luxury having that height. And it's so, we live in New York City, so the light quality in here is really incredible. As I said before, having all the exposures, you really see every direction, and it's just a very pleasant room to be in.
Stepping into the dining room, we have these two curiosity cabinets that are built in, flanking the arch, which comes between the living room and the dining room. And we have a plaque from the Dachshund Club of America in 1912. We have medallions, we have glass, we have all sorts of objects. And I'm going to point out two things. One, in my office we do 3D printing. This is a model we printed of one of them in the office. This is also a printed model of the doorknob design for the second floor and the final doorknob. So this is a little group of things from my office. My favorite object of all is this amazing alligator that was carved from a whalebone by a sailor on a whaling ship in New Bedford, Massachusetts in the 1850s. The architecture of the dining room is different because, unlike all the other rooms which are squares or rectangles, this one has two bowed walls. One is a bay window that looks out towards the lake and the porch, and the other is the bow that heads you towards the kitchen. So it has an interesting and unusual shape.
This is a carved glass sculpture from Mexico, and his name is Feliciano Bajar. And I don't know how I stumbled upon him, but I did. And I've been buying him for about 10 years now. And for a while I was buying one for every client that I had. And this one we bought at auction in Chicago. I don't know, I was not paying attention when it came to my own project, but we got it here, and I didn't realize it was going to be this big. Did you?
It's huge.
But I was imagining they normally are about 20, 24 inches in diameter. This came in a huge crate. We couldn't understand why this big crate for this little tiny Feliciano Bajar, but sure enough, we found a perfect spot for it in the dining room in front of the window.
Yeah, he does this amazing thing with the glass, creating these multiple layers of view. And it's all made with reclaimed auto parts from some junkyard in Mexico. So these are transmission shafts and gears. And we love the fact that he's working with this reclaimed material. The carpet follows the curve of the room, the table's round, and this is an articulated table based on the Jupe model, the antique in England. So as you turn the table, the leaves all come out of the center, and then you put new leaves in. So it's a really practical table. So normally the table's expanded. Katie does the tabletop. I'm in the kitchen cooking. That's my passion on weekends, especially.
Peter's the cook.
And so what we do is we put a tablecloth on the kitchen island so that everyone can serve themselves. So it's not formal. We don't do serve dinner. It's the country.
Yeah.
And we keep the wine on the table so people can pour as much as they feel like drinking within limits. And we it's a wonderful room to be in, and we love the round table because it keeps the conversation open and keeps everyone engaged.
So Peter and I met in 1988. I was working for House and Garden magazine, and Anna Winter had told me that she wanted me to do a story on young people who live with inherited furniture, and she gave me a list of people that she thought I should contact, and one of them was Peter. So I met Peter, I went to his office, and at the time I'd been at House and Garden for 4.5 years, and I really wanted to be a decorator, and so I had told him this when we were talking to each other in his office, and really that's when I changed careers. Peter convinced me to come work for him, which in the end it didn't work out. We got engaged 4 months after we met, and then 5 months after that we were married, and it just was kind of a natural segue from the magazine business to what I'm doing today.
I had some very interesting clients when I started out. My first project was the loft for Isabella Rossellini, and we also we did Keith Haring's Pop Shop, and I think that kind of client attracts the attention of someone like Anna Wintour.
Okay, coming into the kitchen now.
I like to design kitchens so that the cook has the cooking area and everyone else can enjoy being there without being under your feet. And the island is, typical in some ways, but from working on restaurants, I learned that it's really great, if you're for the efficiency of cooking, comfort, to have all the pots and pans and everything at hand. So we had this étagère built with glass shelves. There's lighting built into it, and we later acquired these prototype light fixtures that happen to fit right over. Actually, they're not light fixtures; they're just glass, but they happen to fit over the uplighting. So this is really convenient. Everything lays out here, and again, having a 12-foot ceiling is also wonderful in the kitchen because all the steam and everything that goes on with cooking just floats up to the top.
This wall faces west. You can see the large scale windows, which I love. And these are sculptures that I bought at the New York Botanical Garden show that they have every year, antique garden show. And they're like rubber. They were underwater at Coney Island.
Yeah,
Coney Island.
It was the Coney Island Aquarium that was demolished, and these were salvaged.
Yeah. And they're just fun sculptures. They have zero purpose. They're just fun to look at. And this is where I cut my flowers, and this is where we have breakfast. And it's a very efficient kitchen. This is our pantry right here, and it's just easy to move around. I don't like typically islands that are too big, but this one seems to work really nicely because it's multifunctional. It's got the cooking on that side, and then the cookbooks on this side, all of our storage, and an antique secretary. It's kind of a mess over here. But this is where I keep all my seeds, my vegetables, and my flower seeds.
And
then all my vases go in here, and it's kind of a catch-all for everything. I rarely paint kitchens a color. I guess because there's so much color, usually the rooms that are connecting to the kitchen. This color is like a buffy, neutral.
Almost like a stone.
Yes, like a stone color.
Yeah.
I mean, I have that kind of rose-colored mosaic tile backsplash, and in the frieze I have a wallpaper, but it's pretty toned down.
In designing kitchens, I like to organize all the cabinetry in an architectural frame so that the cabinets don't look like they were just delivered and put in a row. So it really becomes part of the system of paneling. So these are very ordinary mass-produced cabinets. They're not custom, but they're all flanked by symmetrical panels. And it just helps organize the kitchen, makes it feel, I'd say, cleaner and simpler. When you walk in the house, I like people to look up. In fact, sometimes I tell people to look up because we have a lay light or a window in the ceiling of the second floor that you can see from the front hall. And it's surrounded by a round opening. So it's kind of a dramatic and airy moment in the middle of the house. That's what I like people to notice. And in every single room, you see the light traveling around during the day from east to west. So you get the sunset in the living room, which actually doesn't face west because it's open. And the details are traditional, but somewhat different and more abstracted. So let's step right into the stair.
So Peter had told me that because of the scale of the room, I really should have a wallpaper. And we had been traveling to Berlin, right? We're in Berlin.
Yes.
And there was a lot of sgraffito outside the buildings, it looks like carved stone. So you've got decoration on the outside of the building. So that's how this happened.
By the way, the landing up there has the best view in the house because you can see both our pond and the lake. The stair rail Gregory designed, it's like a Chinese Chippendale pattern. And this round column is actually hollow, so if you look at it from above, it's quite something that they were able to make this curve so perfectly. I call it the Pringle. And if you look at the outside, you'll see we have sculptures of our dog on the outside of the stair.
So this is a landing that Peter was talking about, and it gives you a bird's eye view of the preserved land to the north, our pond to the west, and Bonnecue Lake to the east. It's a pretty good view up here. You see my peonies, and Peter was talking about the bear. He lives somewhere over there because we have a camera on the house, and he would come. I think it was a baby bear. He comes in the fall, and we have red cushions, and he comes and he throws the red cushions all over the lawn. We finally backtracked and saw the camera, and it turns out he grabs them, chews them, and throws them all over the place. Here is another Feliciano Bajar that I just found recently in our storage room in the basement. A little baby Feliciana Bajar. So if we keep going, we can go up to our daughter's room. This is my own little curiosity table. I love collecting sea glass and rocks, and I polish things that I find on the beach. I polish this shell.
So here we're back at the center of the house where we can see all four directions. And if you look down, you'll see the entry. And it creates a shelf that has marble sculptures on it.
So this is our youngest daughter, Gigi, her bedroom. And it's fabric covered walls, which I love to do in bedrooms. I think it's just a cozy detail. It's paper backed and applied like wallpaper. And again, I was influenced by Sweden when we were working on this house. It's another, actually this one is Fens 10 fabric. Her bed is in this nook right here, and I would say this is everyone's favorite bedroom. Guests to come stay. It's Gigi's bedroom. And this is a painting by an artist that I've collected. I buy a lot of him from my clients. His name is Carl Schrag.
So let's step outside and I'll show you the front of the house. So I'll tell you a little bit about the architecture of the house. It's a clapboard house. It seems to be Greek Revival at first glance. So we have a column screen and these great sculptures, which are called Anthemion, which we designed in the office and then made a 3D model of, and they were sculpted by Hyde Park Moldings in Long Island. And then we have this Chinese Chippendale motif on the balustrade on the roof. Oh, by the way, if you hear that noise, that's our neighbor who flies gas-powered, remote-controlled airplanes. Somehow he hasn't caught on to drones. So it's just part of the background noise once a week.
The colors of the house, the color of the house is a pale gray. And again, Peter said, Katie, just do your thing. And I said, okay, great. Well, I'm going to paint because the house is very serious, wouldn't you say?
Well, I mean,
it's playful. It's playful too.
I think it's very funny.
But so I really, instead of having a classic black and white house, I really wanted to add some color. So all the mullions are painted red, and all the shutters are like a deep gray to black color with a little bit of blue. And then the rest of the house is painted a pale gray color that you really notice when it's snowing out. That's when you really see the color gray.
It's really important in our houses to have a terrace at the entrance deep enough to accommodate benches and pots. And Katie takes a lot of care planting these pots every year. So this is the stair from the outside, and at the top you'll see a bas-relief of a dachshund and then a rabbit in the middle. So we decided that this is a perfect place to add some art to the house.
This is my garden, and it's enclosed by hornbeam, and I wanted instant gratification. So when we built this house 11 years ago, we bought mature hornbeam. So all the way around the perimeter, you see hornbeam that conceals a deer fence. I go to garden shows and I buy a lot of plants, and some work, some don't. I know my zone and what will work. I have an irrigation system that runs all the way through the bed, so I don't have to worry about when I'm not here Monday through Thursday about it being watered. And then we have this area right here, the pergola that Peter built for me. It's just a very simple structure. We have lunch out here and we have dinner at this table. And we have a seating area over here with, again, another little turtle. This garden really looked good from the get-go because there was nothing here, and we laid an irrigation system down, and I was not dealing with clay soil. We put all new soil in the beds. So it was really not a frustrating experience for me because I had such good drainage. It drains, everything is irrigated from my pond, which is west of us. It's piped up and it flows all the way through all these beds. And then any excess water flows back into the pond. So I would say the most important thing for a garden is to have good drainage because not a lot of plants like to sit in wet soil. But some of my favorite plants, I discovered that lime green really pops in the garden. So over here, I have a lot of grasses with that have that, that really sunny yellow. And of course, yellow and black look so good together. And I'm more and more, serious gardeners have always said, what's important is the texture. And I do, and I am finally getting that. I do understand that you want a plant that looks good 3/4 of the time of the season. That's why these grasses are so important, because it's just it's more important to have, all this chartreuse than it is to have flowers. Millbrook is really about horses. It's a lot about the land, and it's a lot about horses. I do not ride. I was thrown off a horse many, many years ago. I grew up with horses, and I have not ridden since. So I spend all my time in this garden, and weeding and staking and planting and cutting back. Now at this point, my garden is now more about cutting back because everything has gotten so big. Of course, you have to divide, but I never learned the art of showing soil around plants. So everything runs into the next plant, but you really need to have space in between that. So I am forever staking and just cutting, and now I just pull. I've learned a lot from my books and just seeing what works and what doesn't. And this is something that Christopher Lloyd loves he was the gardener at Great Dixter in Sussex in England. And so I've taken a lot of things that he loves, and I've grown them from seed. And this is bronze fennel, which I think is very effective, the fluffiness of it against the harder edged plants below it. And then everything has a growing season, like the peonies. This is a beautiful peony that does not look so great now because we're near the end of the season. And this self-seeds, it just comes up all over, and I yank out all the ones I don't want. And I love black leafed plants. This is a dahlia called Twining After 8. I have a series of beds. I mean, it's chock full of plants that I love. And I wanted to create something just very simple in this bed. So this is like a breather before, all the chaos that goes around it. And this is where, it's so important to have different textures and colors. And you've got this kind of orangey red hydrangea, and you've got the blue Fothergilla. And these are more the shady beds over here. This is a favorite hydrangea over here. It's got very fluffy leaves. It's very soft leaves. And I bought this when it was a little stock, and it's just, everything is really very happy here. And then if you come around here, you can see my greenhouse. All the plants that need protection in the winter, I put in my greenhouse. It's heated. Then these were about this tall when I planted them. They're fastigiate copper beech trees. This is my woodland path that leads to my cutting garden. And I've created all these beds. There was nothing here before. We put in the understory trees, the dogwood, all these beds. This isn't the height, it's all green right now. But the height of this garden, the woodland garden, is spring because everything is in bloom. All the flowering trees are in bloom, and I've got a lot of irises here that are in bloom. Really pretty much April, May, June, there's a lot of color here. And now there won't be a lot of color for the rest of the season. And then if we keep going, there is a pond right here. Everything here we planted 10 years ago, and it was all very small scale. This is a great plant called Penoyer that can be considered invasive, but I think it's so pretty with the creek. And we have a fire pit next to the pond. And then up there is my cutting garden. There was a small creek here, and Peter dug it to, I think the magic number is 19 or 20 feet. So we dug the pond and expanded it. It's spring fed. But the pond is what feeds all my garden, all the woodland garden and my cutting garden up here. Frank Cabot has an incredible garden not too far from here in Cold Spring. And I went one winter day, and he had a pond like mine, and he had birch trees that from one direction reflected perfectly in the water. So that's why I planted all these birch right here. And from the other direction at the certain times of days, you get this beautiful reflection of the white birch in the water. And then all this land is protected land. It was one family and they gave it to the DLC, Duchess Land Conservancy. And so everything is protected, which is incredible. We're so lucky. So it's a little messy in here. I have my cucumbers and my peas and my peppers. These are potatoes, and then of course my dahlias, my rhubarb, all the way back, my dahlias, and asparagus, and raspberries, and my tomatoes. I don't know what happened to my tomatoes this year because I grow them from seed and they have not done very well. I normally have, this thing covered with tomatoes. Home means to me someplace that is all about you, that is comfortable.
It is a reflection of who we are. Our houses are very personal, but I think for each of us, the biggest test is how comfortable our friends feel when they come. And people find this house unusual, but everyone seems to feel very comfortable here. And we enjoy entertaining and we enjoy having friends. And that's what home is for me. Thanks, Homeworthy, for coming to our house. We hope you enjoyed the tour and we hope to see you soon.
Bye.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to go to homeworthy.com for exclusive content, shopping guides, and so much more.